They left her at dawn, tied to the cold, burnt stump just beyond the edge of the pines. No blanket, no fire, no prayer. Only the wind and the snow and the silent shame of the tribe behind her. She had spoken against the elders, had stood during council and said what no young woman should, that the war parties had gone too far, that the raids were turning their people into shadows, and for that they called her traitor. Not with knives, but with silence and ropes. Her name was Weya. Her hands, bound behind her back, had gone numb hours ago. The snow was falling light now, but it had fallen heavier in the night. The ground around her was waist deep. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a wolf howled. She closed her eyes and let her head hang, but her thoughts didn't drift to survival. They drifted to her mother's face, and the last time she'd felt her hand. That was before the sickness came, before the tribe grew thin with hunger and thick with fear. Weya had tried to speak truth, but truth had no place when pride ruled. A sound made her freeze, a low growl not far off. She turned her head sharply and saw it, a shape in the trees, cat-like, slow, a mountain lion, big, too big. Its eyes met hers across the snow. She didn't scream. She had nothing left. The cat padded forward, curious, sniffing the air. It circled slowly, then sat 10 feet from her, watching. Weya stared back. "Then let it be you," she whispered. "Better you than the cold." But the cat did not move. It only blinked. Then its ears twitched. It turned its head east, listened, and vanished into the trees. Moments later she heard it too. Hoofbeats. Slow. Deliberate. A rider. A shape emerged through the pines. A man cloaked in furs, rifle slung, beard white with frost. His horse snorted as he drew close and stopped. He looked from Weya to the tracks in the snow. "Mountain cat?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her lips were purple. He dismounted, knelt, and cut the rope from her wrists. "Looks like she led me straight to you," he said, not unkindly. "Smart beast." Weya slumped forward. He caught her before she hit the snow. His hands were rough, but careful. "Easy now. You're safe." But even as he said it, he looked to the tree line, because something about the air told him they weren't alone out there. The man's name was Elias Gray, a trapper who hadn't spoken to another soul in over 6 weeks. He didn't ask Weya what she'd done or where she was from. He just carried her gently through the snow, set her on his horse, and led them both back toward a cabin so well hidden it didn't appear until you were nearly at the door. Weya drifted in and out of waking as the warmth of the cabin hit her skin. The mountain lion's tracks had vanished in the wind, but her image stayed in Elias's mind. A silent guardian with golden eyes. Inside, the fire roared quickly to life. He laid Weya on a cot by the hearth, wrapped her in buffalo hide, and rubbed snow from her cheeks. Her lips trembled but formed no sound. Her body had stiffened dangerously. "You're not dying on me," Elias muttered, placing a hot stone wrapped in cloth at her feet. He had seen men lose fingers in this kind of cold. Seen worse, too, especially when the weather hit fast like it had last night. As the heat crept through her bones, Weya began to stir. Her fingers twitched. Her lashes fluttered open, her eyes dark and sharp, fixed on the stranger kneeling beside her. "Why?" she rasped. It was the first word she'd spoken in days. Elias looked at her a long moment. "Because leaving folks to freeze doesn't sit right with me," he said simply. "That's enough reason, ain't it?" She stared at him, unsure whether to believe it. People didn't do things without wanting something, not from her. Not lately. "You're Comanche," he added gently. "Ain't hard to tell. And this ain't your land." Her eyes narrowed. "It was." That landed like a stone. Elias nodded slowly. "Fair." He stood and stirred a pot hanging over the fire, ladling broth into a cup. He brought it to her lips and waited while she drank. "You got a name?" he asked. "Weya." "Elias." The silence settled again, but it was softer this time. Outside, the wind howled, snow whirling like ghosts. Inside, the fire popped, and Elias sat across from her, carving something small out of wood. He didn't push for more. He just sat there, quiet, steady, like a mountain. And for the first time since they'd tied her to that stump, Weya let her shoulders ease. She didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew she wasn't alone anymore. And that, for now, was enough. By the third morning, Weya was walking again. Her legs ached and her fingers burned with returning life, but she didn't complain. Elias gave her space, offering food, fire, and silence in equal measure. She watched him carefully, the way he rose before dawn to check his traps, how he returned with snow-dusted pelts and a few hard-earned hairs. He moved like someone who'd lived too long with ghosts, the kind of man who didn't talk about the past because it stayed behind his eyes. That morning she followed him outside. The snow had hardened under the night's cold, crusted over like glass. The forest was still. Too still. Elias noticed it first. He knelt by a stand of firs, brushing snow aside. Hoof prints. "Riders," he muttered. Weya's stomach tightened. "How many?" "3. Maybe 4. Not mine. Not yours either, I'd guess." He stood, scanning the trees. "Not the kind that leave you tied up unless they want you dead. These are trackers." Weya stepped beside him. "I know who they are." Her voice was low, flat. "They followed me. They'll burn everything to bury what I said." Elias didn't ask what she meant, but something in his expression shifted. He touched the butt of the rifle slung over his shoulder. "Then we'd best not be here when they circle back." No. Her eyes were sharp now. "They won't stop. Not until they think I froze to death like they wanted. If they see smoke, they'll know." Elias studied her, then gave a slow nod. "We make it look like you never survived. Then we vanish." Together, they set to work. Elias scattered broken wood and scrap cloth from an old coat into the woods a few 100 yards away. Weya laid her own beads and a single braid of her hair into the snow beside them. Elias poured bear grease over the fire pit stones, then kicked snow into the hearth. It looked like chaos, like something tragic had happened and no one survived. "Will it work?" she asked, breath clouding in the air. Elias looked to the sky, then the trees. "Only if we're already gone when they come." He handed her a bedroll and a pack. "We go east, old trapper trail. Few follow it now." Weya shouldered the gear without hesitation. As they left the cabin behind, she didn't look back. She'd spoken truth once and been punished, but this time she would carry it with her, and the cold would not take her again. The trail eastward was narrow, winding through black spruce and bone-white aspen. Snow crunched beneath their boots, and above them, the wind whispered through the bare branches like voices not yet gone. Elias led with practiced steps, his long coat dusted with frost, rifle always close. Weya followed just behind, her eyes sharp, her silence deeper than the forest. Neither spoke much. There was no need. The weight of pursuit clung to them like the cold. Around midday, they paused near a rocky outcrop. Elias motioned for silence, crouching near a bend in the trail. He pointed. Below them, in a valley of white, rode 3 figures, dark against the snow, moving with purpose. One dismounted to inspect the ground. Weya leaned forward. "That's Deer Eye?" she whispered. "He's the one who tied the knot." Elias's jaw tightened. "They're good trackers." "Too good." Weah drew in a breath. He used to hunt for the tribe, knows the land better than I do. Then we stop thinking like hunted, Elias murmured, and start thinking like the land. He led them off the path, cutting a diagonal route through tangled brush and frozen stream beds. Weah moved with grace, light on her feet despite the snow, adjusting quickly to his signs and rhythms. She didn't ask where they were going. But as the sun dipped low, Elias stopped at a narrow crevice between two hills, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. "Here," he said. "Old Bear Den hasn't been used in years." Inside was tight and dark, the air musky with old fur and dust. But it was dry and hidden. They laid out their bedrolls without fire. Elias passed her dried meat and a flask of melted snow. Weah accepted both, then sat with her back to the wall, legs drawn up, eyes flickering in the dimness. "I wasn't trying to shame them," she said suddenly. "Only warn them. The raids. They were turning us into what we used to fear." Elias didn't speak right away. He chewed slowly, then looked up at her. "Truth sounds like shame when pride listens," he said. She stared at him, surprised by the clarity of it. He shrugged. "I've been on both sides of that." Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through the rocks like a warning. Elias reached for his rifle and settled in close to the entrance. "Get some sleep. I'll keep watch." Weah hesitated, then nodded. She didn't close her eyes yet, but for the first time, she felt safer than she had in weeks. Not because they were hidden, but because someone had finally understood. Morning brought a strange hush. No birds, no wind, just the muffled stillness of deep snow and expectation. Elias rose before dawn, stepping from the narrow cave to scout the surrounding ridge. Weah followed moments later, her breath tight in her chest. Below the bluff, clear in the fresh powder, were 4 sets of hoof prints. "They split," Elias muttered. 2 doubled back toward the cabin. 2 are still moving east. "They're trying to circle us," Weah said. Her eyes scanned the tree line, instincts kicking in like muscle memory. "Deer Eye knows this trick. He's flushing us uphill." Elias nodded grimly. "Then we don't go uphill." He pulled a rough map from his coat, unfolded it, and pointed. "There's a stone basin 2 ridges over, shallow canyon. If we drop into it, the wind will cover our tracks. But it's tight. We'll be walking single file along ledges." "If they follow, they'll have to do the same," Weah said. Elias gave her a faint smile. "Exactly." They moved quickly, using the trees as cover. Elias walked ahead, carving shallow notches into trunks to mask their height. Weah swept behind with a pine branch, brushing tracks away like someone who'd done it before. She had. Years ago, her brother had taught her the same trick. He'd died in the first winter raid. Now it felt like a ghost was walking beside her again. By midday, the sun glared off the cliffs. They reached the canyon edge, sharp rock on one side, a 20-foot drop on the other. Elias went first, pressing his weight carefully on the icy ledge. Weah followed. The wind howled between the stones, lifting her braids like black fire behind her. They moved in silence for nearly an hour, the cliffs towering high and blank. But then Weah stopped. She turned suddenly, her eyes narrowing. A sound behind them, far but deliberate. A clatter, a rock disturbed. Elias pressed to the canyon wall, rifle raised, and there, 2 ridges up, stood a man, broad-shouldered, wrapped in wolf fur, staring straight at them. Deer Eye. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He just raised one hand and pointed at Weah, then vanished into the trees. "They know," she said softly. Elias didn't lower the rifle. "Let him follow," he said. "Let him bring his pride." Weah looked at him. You don't have to stay in this. Neither do you, Elias said. But here we are. They didn't run. Not yet. The canyon still held secrets, and Weya had no intention of dying before she finished what she'd started. The storm rolled in with no warning, dark clouds spilling over the peaks like ink across a canvas. Snow followed fast, sideways and sharp, erasing the trail behind them before the wind had even begun to howl. Elias pulled his coat tighter and kept them close to the canyon wall. "We wait it out," he shouted over the wind. "No sense walking blind." Weya nodded, teeth clenched, her eyes squinting against the stinging flakes. They found a shallow overhang beneath a curved rock and crawled beneath it, pressed close for warmth as the blizzard closed around them. Hours passed. The world narrowed to breathing and cold. "He wasn't always like that," Weya said suddenly, her voice barely carried above the wind. "Dear Eye, he was kind when we were children, taught me how to track, how to listen to the snow." Elias didn't respond at first. He just stared into the white beyond the ledge, his jaw tight. "Men don't change," he finally said. "They just show what was always buried when they get power." Weya hugged her knees to her chest. "I spoke out during council. I said the raids were wrong, that killing unarmed settlers wouldn't bring back what we lost. They called it betrayal." Elias glanced at her, the lines around his eyes deep with knowing. "You said what they feared, not what they hated. Same difference now." She blinked, and tears slipped down her cheeks, half from cold, half from memory. "They said if I didn't freeze, the mountain would eat me, that the spirits would finish what they couldn't." Elias shifted closer, his breath warming the air between them. "Then maybe the spirits are on your side. That cat didn't find you by accident." Weya managed a faint smile. "Or maybe she just wanted to watch me die." "No," Elias said, his voice firmer. "She led me, watched you until I came. There are animals that serve death, but that one, she served mercy." The blizzard wailed louder. For a long while they said nothing, just sat in the breath of one another, letting the cold make everything still. Then, from beyond the rocks, footsteps, crunching, deliberate, too close. Elias raised a hand. Weya froze. Another step, then silence. The storm had cloaked whoever it was. Elias reached for his rifle. Weya gripped a small blade hidden in her boot. One breath. Two. The next moment could be their last, or the beginning of something they hadn't seen coming. The footstep came again, closer this time, then nothing but the roar of wind and silence. Elias motioned for Weya to stay low and crept toward the edge of the overhang, rifle braced, eyes scanning the snow-blind world beyond. Nothing moved, not a branch, not a shadow. Then he saw it, just at the edge of vision, a flicker of movement. A figure crouched low behind a broken pine stump, almost invisible in the storm. Whoever it was hadn't expected them to stop. Elias took a breath, aimed high, and fired, not to kill but to warn. The crack split the air. The figure darted, vanishing behind a rise. Elias slid back into the shelter. "Just one," he said. "Could have been a scout." Weya's face was pale, her fingers clenched around the blade. "It was Deer Eye. I know his crouch." "Then he knows we're ready. He always plays long. He's not here to fight. He's here to frighten." Elias gave her a grim nod. "Then he doesn't know us well enough." The storm passed by dawn, leaving behind a strange stillness. Every tree wore a crown of snow, and the world glittered under a pale winter sun. Elias and Weya moved quickly, descending into the basin trail with cautious steps. Around midday, they found something strange. Tracks, but not hoofprints. Human feet, bare, small. Elias crouched beside them. "Child?" he asked. Weya knelt beside him, her breath caught. Number, it's one of the old rituals. Spirit walking. They do it to scare outsiders. Walk barefoot in the snow to leave ghost trails. It means they're close. Trying to rattle us. Elias stood. It's working. Wea's eyes moved to the trees. They want us afraid of the past, of spirits, of exile. But they forget. I've already walked out of the cold once. As they continued on, Elias asked, "Why do you think they're trying so hard to catch you?" It's more than wounded pride. Wea was quiet for a long while. Then she said, "Because I carry something they can't erase." She reached into the lining of her coat and pulled out a small leather bundle. Inside were pages, crude parchment covered in careful writing. "This is my mother's. She learned to write from a missionary woman. It tells our truth, names, places, the treaties broken, the raids, everything." Elias stared at the bundle, then at her. "So that's what they want, silenced." Wea nodded. "If I die, the story dies with me." Elias's voice was firm. "Then we don't let that happen." And with that the wind picked up again, this time from the west, and behind it, faintly, the sound of riders returning to the hunt. By dusk, Elias and Wea had reached the ruins of an old mining station tucked into a gully. Its roof half collapsed, but its stone walls still strong enough to block wind. Elias swept inside first, checking every corner with practiced care. "We stay here tonight," he said. "No fire, too visible." Wea nodded, settling near the back wall. She unwrapped the leather bundle again, her fingers tracing the inked letters like they were sacred carvings. "She hid this for years," she whispered. "Said truth was like a seed. You hide it too long, it stops growing." Elias leaned against the doorway. "And now you carry it." "She died for it," Wea said. "Not by a bullet, but by the silence. No one listened, not even the ones who should have." Elias didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his own pack and pulled out something small, a folded cloth with initials embroidered in red. "This was my sister's," he said. "She taught freed slaves to read, took in orphaned children, native and settler alike. One winter, men came and burned her schoolhouse to the ground, said she was poisoning their way of life." Wea looked at him with quiet understanding. "What did you do?" "Buried the dead," he said, "then went into the hills and never looked back." She nodded slowly. "We both walked away from fire." "But now we're walking toward something," Elias said. "Your truth matters, even if no one wants it." Just then, a sound cracked through the stillness. Hoofbeats, close, heavy. Elias grabbed his rifle and motioned Wea to the far corner. They crouched in the dark, breath shallow. The front door creaked slowly open. A shadow stepped inside. Not Deer Eye, a younger man, face hard with purpose, blade in hand. He moved slowly, listening. Then Wea did something unexpected. She stood. Elias hissed a warning, but she raised a hand. "He was my cousin," she said softly. "I know his heart." The man froze. His eyes widened. "Wea?" She nodded. "They lied to you. I didn't betray our people. I tried to protect them. The truth is in these pages. Read them." The man didn't move at first. Then slowly he lowered his knife. "They said you joined the white man." "No," she said. "But this one saved me when my own left me to die." Elias stepped forward, watching the exchange like a man who'd seen too many endings. The cousin looked between them, then said, "Deer Eye is close. But I'll buy you time." And just like that, he vanished into the dusk, leaving the door swinging behind him and the truth still breathing in Wea's arms. They didn't run that night. They waited. Every moment stretched thin with tension, breath shallow, ears tuned to the forest's every whisper. Elias kept his rifle in hand, back against the stone wall. Weya sat cross-legged with her mother's bundle beside her, eyes closed, as if listening for more than sound. At dawn, the snow began again. Gentler this time, like the mountain was trying to cover what it knew would come. Just before midday, the door creaked. A figure stepped in. This time it was Deer Eye, alone. His wolfskin cloak hung heavy on his shoulders, and his gaze was cold as mountain ice. He didn't raise a weapon. He simply stared at Weya. "You should have died on that stump," he said flatly. Elias took a step forward, but Weya stopped him with a hand. She rose slowly. "You told them I was a traitor," she said. "But it's you who broke the old ways." Deer Eye's jaw twitched. "You brought shame with your talk of peace. You would have softened the young, made them forget what was done to us." "I didn't ask them to forget," she said, her voice rising. "I asked them to stop becoming what we hate." She lifted the bundle between them. "My mother's truth is here, our treaties, our grief, our honor, and what we're becoming now." Deer Eye stared at the bundle like it was a torch about to set fire to everything he'd built. "You'll destroy us." "No," Elias said. "She'll save what's left." Deer Eye's eyes flicked to the mountain man. "And you? You think you belong in this story?" Elias didn't flinch. "I don't. But I know what it costs to silence truth. And I won't let you do it again." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Deer Eye drew a knife. "She walks out of here over my body." "Then that's how it ends," Weya whispered. But before the blade could rise, another shadow appeared behind Deer Eye, her cousin, silent and fast. A club struck from behind. The knife dropped. Deer Eye crumpled to his knees, stunned. "That's for the children who never came home," her cousin said, breath ragged. "And for our mother's teachings you spit on." He looked to Weya. "Go. There's a woman across the ridge. Keep stories for the Lakota and the Crow. She'll hide your pages. Protect them." Weya stepped forward, placed a hand on Deer Eye's chest, and said a final word in Comanche he would never repeat. Then she and Elias vanished into the trees, carrying with them a truth that had finally been defended. Not with vengeance, but with sacrifice. Weeks passed. The snow melted slowly, uncovering the scars winter had hidden. In a small wooden cabin tucked near the edge of a valley where birch trees leaned like watchers, Elias and Weya made their new life. Not loud, not large, but real. Every morning, Elias rose before light, checking traps and chopping wood. Every evening, Weya wrote. She used her mother's ink and rough paper traded from a mountain merchant. Her words were steady now, like steps on solid ground. The bundle of pages had grown. No longer just records of treaties and betrayals, but now stories of mercy, of moments where hate had hesitated and silence had broken. The woman her cousin had spoken of, a Lakota keeper named Naeli, visited once, wrapped in crimson and bone. She took the writings with care, promising they'd be copied and carried to other tribes. "Not all stories are meant for war," she said, "but every story is a weapon when it holds the truth." Elias had watched from the porch that day, arms folded, a quiet pride in his eyes. He hadn't said much, but Weya saw how his shoulders finally eased, like he'd stopped waiting for ghosts. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in fading gold, Weya found a small carving on the edge of the cabin. It was new. A mountain lion, etched into the wood, with its tail curled protectively around a tiny fawn. She turned to Elias, who stood nearby, sharpening a blade. "You did this?" He gave a sheepish nod. "Didn't want you to forget what led me to you." She stepped close, placed a hand on his arm. "I never could. She came when no one else did, just like you." That night, as stars came out one by one, they sat side by side on the porch, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the fire burn low in the pit. "They'll come again," Elias said quietly. "Maybe not Deer Eye, but others, men afraid of what they don't understand." Weah nodded. "Then we keep the fire lit, so others can find it." The wind rustled the pines, no longer angry, just alive. And from somewhere deep in the forest, a mountain lion cried once, low, proud, and wild. They listened, and in that sound, there was no fear left. Only memory. Only the pulse of something sacred refusing to die. The kind of truth that even winter couldn't bury.